Welcome to Salaam Nerds Podcast. We do reviews and recaps of your favorite reality TV shows. Our views do not reflect the contestants outside of the show.
Yo, it's Salaam Nerds. My name is Dean, aka Watchman Dean. I'm here with my boy Chad.
We drop live episodes on YouTube on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. All episodes can also be found everywhere podcasts are found. Thank you to all our supporters. Please help us by subscribing and leaving a good review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yo, Salaam Nerds. It's your boy Neebs, aka Watchman Neebs, and I'm here with our special guest. You guys know him. He's been on the show a couple of times. Our expert in all Tolkien. Swara, welcome to the show.
Namarie melon, elen sila lumen omentia ve elvo.
Yeah, I like it when you speak Elvish to me. That's what's up.
Yes, I said, hello, my friend. A star shines on the hour of our meeting.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I love that. I do not know any Elvish, but I do know a little Donde está biblioteca. I don't know. Too bad all the libraries are burnt in Middle Earth because of the orcs. Shout out to book burning in Middle Earth.
Yeah, now we can talk all spoilers. Now, like, I watched the finale. I watched it several weeks ago at this point. So, yeah, everyone's caught up.
Everyone's caught up, and now everything is ready to talk about, man. So let's talk about some of this stuff. What do you want to talk about? Because one of the storylines that I really like in this season is all the stuff going on with Doran and his father and their reconciliation. And I love how they build up where, like, you know, he gets the rings, is obviously corrupting him. We see the ring actually bring some good to Khazad-dûm because there's like they found air, they found light, and then they found more mithril. So he's like, hey, this is all doing good stuff. And Doran's the only one that's like, hey, something doesn't seem right here. And he goes to Celebrimbor and he's like, how much do you know about this Anatar guy? And then we see his father just getting deeper and deeper into this like darkness. And then finally, when they find the Balrog and he realizes what he's done, they have this epic scene of him going off into the Balrog, trying to fight him. An epic scene. I really, really enjoyed the way. And then it comes to the title sequence. And I was like, this is awesome. This is so great. What are your thoughts about that storyline? Because I really did enjoy that.
Yeah, I think Durin the Third went out like a champ. I think that he redeemed himself for his craven actions under the influence of the ring, but also ultimately it is his own choice. This is the thing you need to know about the Rings of Power is that they amplify what is already within their wearers and users. Right. So, yeah, you know, like Durin, he was an overall good king for most of his reign, but towards the end, he became more selfish, more focused on building up wealth for Khazad-dûm, and yeah, the ring amplified that to kind of the nth degree. And it's just like, but yeah, he still redeemed himself at the end. But you know, the ring, as we see, obviously is left over for Durin the Fourth to take. And you know, I'm going to reference our own review that we did on the Middle Geeks podcast. So hopefully audiences, y'all go check that out. Arzu, our guest on there, said that earlier in the season, Disa had asked Durin, please never wear the ring or one of those rings. Right. And he said, no, I obviously it won't, but still, there's a reason you put that in there. It's a Chekhov's gun situation, or in this case, Chekhov's ring.
Yeah.
Where, you know, that's going to play into next season where Durin will be tempted to use the ring to lead as the new king. That's probably what we're going to see.
I really like the storytelling of how the ring is affecting him because we see this scene where Anatar comes to Durin and he says that, you know, you need to give us more mithril, and the king is like, no, we're not going to do that. And you're like, oh, cool. There's still good inside of him. He still has some you know, some sense. And then when he leaves, you see him smirk and you're like, oh, I wonder what that's about. And then he goes to Durin. Oh, this was a negotiating tactic. I'm just gonna get more get more shit out of him. Like, and you can see like the greed festering in him. And I love how they threw that in there to kind of throw us off, like, oh, maybe the ring is not that strong. Then you're like, no, he's in there deep.
Yeah, for sure.
So we see a lot of that. Now we go to Celebrimbor, and he has to make these rings for man, and he's like, well, we can't make rings for men. They're not to be trusted. They teamed up with so-and-so. And then we see Anatar try to reason with him, and slowly you can see the masterful art of gaslighting, where he just like literally in these 4 episodes, we see him go from someone who's saying man cannot be trusted to these rings to we gotta make these rings for man, to the point where we actually see Sauron create a literal gaslight situation where he does not know his reality from fiction, and he only figured it out because of the candle and the mouse, and he realized he was in some kind of time loop. I thought that was fantastic. I think the best part of this entire season was the Celebrimbor and Sauron storyline, and how amazing that they show how he can get into your mind and slowly but surely completely control you. And I think that's fantastic.
That's Sauron's greatest strength, this manipulation, whether it's himself or through the One Ring, to get people to do what he wants. This is his part of his power over the flesh that he keeps talking about. And Charlie Vickers in this role is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of interviewing Charlie Vickers twice for the Nerds of Color. Check that out on YouTube. And as I'm sure like y'all will see in interviews with him in general, he strikes me as such a humble guy who is so committed to his art. And he has been kind of thrust into fame with this, one of the most famous roles of all time. And he's doing it such justice. And he's a deep fan of the books, of Sauron as a character, and he knows how much this means to people. Like, in general, Sauron is for me, overall, like Sauron in Disa specifically. Like, I love Princess, now soon to be Queen Disa, played by Black Iranian actress Sofia Nomvete. She's amazing. They're my 2 favorite parts of the show. And with Sauron as played by Charlie Vickers specifically, he is functionally the protagonist of the show. He's the evil protagonist who's manipulating everyone around him and is making Middle-earth descend into chaos increasingly.
He is the Lord of the Rings.
Literally the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And to see him as Annatar and his manipulation of Celebrimbor and the other elven smiths in a region, that was so great. I think it was overall really well done. One critique I have of the show is that it does take some deviations here and there from what Tolkien actually had in Second Age history.
Right.
However, I think that part of that might be because they're specifically not allowed to adapt the Silmarillion, which has like a compilation of the Second Age history in there, and instead they have to only go by the appendices of Lord of the Rings. Sort of take so it's like they're actually limited in what they can adapt. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so fundamentally, the Rings of Power, it's not a canon series, but it's an adaptation and interpretation of Tolkien's work that serves as an effective prelude to the Lord of the Rings and everything that happens in the Third Age. So I think they overall do it well. There's maybe some few things here or there I would have changed, or I would have tried to change, as a committed Tolkienite. But for what it is, I think it's a great series. I think that they do mostly things really well. Again, there's some things I would tinker here and there, but one of the strongest things they have is Charlie Vickers as Sauron and being entranced with seeing where he's going next.
Yeah, and to say that, like, his range would be an understatement, because when we see him in the first season, and I'm like, okay, he's this pretty boy Aragon vibe. It's kind of just like,
Mm.
talking up Gladriel, hitting her up, and then you see him just change into a completely different character this season, to the point where I questioned whether it was even the same actor. I was like, did they change actors? What's going on
Yeah,
here?
he's
Right?
that good. Yeah.
He's that good, and it's really, really cool to see. So I have read Lord of the Rings, I read The Hobbit, I love the movies, but I don't know anything about the Silmarillion. So, like, for me,
Mhm.
like, a lot of this where, like, people are getting mad about what's being changed and what's different, I don't see that. I don't see that
Yeah,
at all. So I'm
of
coming
course.
at
Yeah.
this, like, pretty clean, and to me, like, I love the storytelling, I love the stories, I love the dialogue. I know a few people online are like, "Oh, they're butchering the story," and, like, as someone who doesn't maybe know that story and how it's connected to the Silmarillion, to me, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, I am loving it
Yeah.
completely.
I think what they're really doing is enhancing certain things that we didn't get enough of in Tolkien's work, amplifying them. Chief among them, Queen Tad Miriel, as played by Cynthia Dye Robinson.
Right.
She's fantastic in this role. Without, like if you ever want to read the books, and there's still stuff in there that's definitely going to come into play in a third season.
Mm.
But I can tell you, like Miriel in the books, she's almost like a footnote. She has barely any, to be honest, the way I interpret it is agency in the books. She's
Yeah.
given so much more here that Cynthia Dye Robinson is able to put into it and the writers put into it.
Right.
She's a fully fleshed out character, this committed queen, this heir to the throne who genuinely cares about her people, who I think I mentioned to you before, like Tolkien himself was a monarchist
Right, you
who
said that.
hated, yes, who hated democracy for, frankly, a lot of the reasons we see today why democratic systems don't work as
Mhm.
they're intended to, and often you have a lot of corruption in that. He saw monarchy as a stabilizing force, and I think he would have loved Tad Miriel, as portrayed in the show, as an example of that stabilizing force for someone who is willing to sacrifice everything for her people. And again, Cynthia Dye Robinson plays it so beautifully with such conviction, and she's another one of the standout characters of the show.
Yeah, I love her storyline. I think her acting is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I liked her from season 1, and I think she did such a great job in season 2, even more so with everything that's going on with Pharazôn and the king, and
Hmm.
how she's being usurped, and then she comes to the rescue of, people who are being put in trial, and then she is redeemed as, innocent by the Valor. And then the king is like, "Psych, just kidding. You're all in league with Sauron. We don't need any proof. Here's the letter." And I'm just like, "Oh, what's going on here?" Then the Gestapo comes out and starts kicking
Hmm.
everybody out. And I'm like very curious to see where this is going. And she talks to the ship captain, and she tells him that
Hmm.
his story is to be still seen, and her story stays here. And I'm really curious to see
Right.
where that goes, and how well that plays out. Because Numeria is really the only place where, like, men have any, like, real, I don't know, like, power in
Hmm.
terms of, like, might, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see where that goes, how that works out. A lot of, like, Game of Thrones type politics happening over there in Numeria.
Yeah. In Numenor. Yeah.
Numenor, sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll see what happens next season. I don't know at all.
We'll see. All right. They also another thing that they showed in one of the first episodes of well, not the first episode, the fifth episode, since we stopped at episode 4 last time. We saw a little bit of how some of the rings work, and
Hmm.
we saw one of the apprentices disappear, which is like, oh, which is like the One Ring, and she was walking around with the hammer, and Celebrimbor had to take it off of her, because they couldn't really figure out how to make the rings for men work. So I'm curious, what's is that what the rings for men do? Are they the ones that just make people disappear? Everyone has different powers. Like, what are they supposed to be like?
So this isn't a spoiler. We
Hmm.
know these 9 rings will eventually become the rings of the Nazgul, the ring
Hmm.
wraiths. these are the 9 rings given to mortal men doomed to die.
Right.
So, which does also begs the question, because we know the dwarves themselves are mortal as well, but men have a specific kind of mortality, called the doom of men, or gift to men, in Tolkien's Legendarium, given by the one god Erluvatar.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I honestly don't know the exact details. What I would imagine it is, because of this mortality of men, really, I will say, the mortality given to men is sacred. It's described in Tolkien's work as a gift given to men, as opposed to the elves, who are immortal.
Right.
So, messing with that in some ways maybe necessitates a connection to the hidden realm, and allowing men to draw power from the hidden realm. Perhaps that's what it is. You remember in Fellowship of the Ring, when Frodo put on the ring while he was facing the ring wraiths, and he saw them as like these white skeletal beings.
Yeah, we saw that. Yep.
Yes, those were their true forms. What we see in the real world is, them draped in black and not showing their faces. They barely even functionally exist. It's almost as though their essences have been transported to this hidden realm of. So I would imagine that it has to do with their mortality. That's the reason why you have this phasing in between realms.
Interesting. All right, I'm very curious to see what actors they pick and how that comes about, because when they pick.
But we may have met some of the ring race already, for all we know.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Because the thing is, in the books, like, it's rarely ever confirmed, like, who any of these men are. I think 1 or 2 of them are Eastern kings. But I think the showrunners are given a lot of leeway to work
Yeah.
with the ring race. So
Okay.
we'll see how that goes forward.
That's gonna be very interesting. I'm very curious to see that. I also noticed that, like, they gave the 9 rings to, not 9. How many rings did they get to the dwarves?
7.
7. We don't see any of the other dwarves, like, using the ring.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
Not
So I'm
yet.
curious to see how that goes. That's another thing that I'm curious about. Another storyline.
Maybe Disa is one of the 7 dwarf lords who gets a ring, for all we know.
Our queen could never do that.
I mean, we don't know. Like, I do think that this show does a good job of showing a lot of dynamism to most of its characters.
That is true.
And as much as I love Disa, I could very easily see a situation arise in which she may feel like she may need to use a ring. And it's not like to say that she's impure or anything like that, but rather that this show works really well at putting its various characters under these pressures.
Well, we saw it with Elrond, right?
Yeah, we saw it with Elrond, yeah.
Right, exactly. He was the biggest proponent of saying, no, we're not going to use the ring. These are bad. These are not good. They're going to lead us to issues. And he finds himself in a situation where he has to use it to save Galadriel, right? So I thought they could write. That's what I said. Like, the show can write really well, because, like, you have to get the audience to believe that this is a situation. They didn't just, like, they're just trying to write themselves out of a corner. They're actually, like, thinking this far ahead, and the actor's job is to portray that. And I think that's what they do. They do a really good job. The other storyline that's happening that we get to really find is Tom Bombadil and this wizard who we finally get to find out his name. I really loved how they did that. I don't know. I know you were not a big fan of this. You did not want him to be Gandalf. Yeah. I was like, that's pretty obvious. That's where they were going. I was like, that makes the most sense here.
Listen, I said before, like, okay. So again, referencing our Middle Geeks review of the show, Arzu had to be the one to, like, remind me of this storyline.
Okay.
Because we'd already discussed so much. And I think that in and of itself, like, all respect to the actors who do a very good job overall, but this is very unnecessary. I'm sorry. Like I would have been intrigued if
Hmm.
this guy was one of the two blue wizards whom
Right.
we almost hear nothing about in on-screen media
Yeah.
and went into something unique about the blue wizards and their efforts to tamper down Sauron's influence in the east in Rune, because that is canon.
Hmm.
That's something I would love to see. That's something I think they would have a lot of leeway to do with. We did not need Gandalf's origin story, especially because Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast arrive in Middle Earth in year 1000 of the Third Age. We
Hmm.
are in like the middle of the Second Age here. This is way too early. And honestly, it's Gandalf is one of my favorite characters of all time. He's my
Hmm.
favorite character in Lord of the Rings. I love Ian McKellen's portrayal of him. I just love Gandalf overall. He's fantastic. So he's really precious to me.
Hmm.
I don't. I just didn't need to see this.
I
I
didn't
didn't need to
mind
see.
it. I liked it. I liked it. But the thing is, like, I felt like it makes a lot of sense. It also makes sense why he's so fond of hobbits because these people are going to derive from hobbits, or the hobbits are going to derive from these people,
Mhm.
and it kind of shows like he's always had an affinity with these people, right? And then we also have the Dark Wizard, which we get to see more and more of, and we get to see that battle, and I think it makes more sense for it to be Gandalf to have this battle with the Dark Wizard than a random wizard who we don't know.
But I want the random wizard. That's the thing. I want to know more about the blue wizards. And it gives like a blank canvas for the showrunners to work with.
Mm,
Instead, we have Gandalf, whom everyone knows.
yeah,
And we just like, I don't know. There's just something that real, like, no disrespect to the actor, but there's something about using Gandalf in this way. And like, I'm sorry,
I get what you're
like
saying. You feel
but
like it's a crutch, and it.
it's not even that. It's not even that it's a crutch. It's that it feels, if I'm being honest with how I feel about it, and no
Mhm,
disrespect to the showrunners when I say this, but it feels kind of exploitative in a way. It's like a step too far from where they needed to go. And with all due respect, like, but I feel like this was a step too far. That's how
mm.
I feel fundamentally. I need to be honest here. So maybe I'll change my mind in season 3. I'm completely open to changing my mind. I just, you know what? I want to see where they go with this.
Yeah.
Then I can fully judge it. But at the moment, I feel like this was handled a little lopsidedly, to be
Mm.
quite
Well, let
frank.
me ask you the question a different way. Like,
Sure.
say this was forget the fact that you don't want it to be a Gandalf origin story, or it didn't need to be a Gandalf origin. But as a Gandalf origin story, did you like it?
No,
No.
I
Okay.
didn't. I just thought that because I know this isn't Gandalf's origin story. Again, Gandalf is a character that's so sacred, really, to many of us. Like, we know what he was up to in Valinor when he was named Olorin,
Mhm.
when he was one of the Maya of Manwë, and why he was reticent to go to Middle Earth. Like, there was an actual arc for Gandalf in a lot of these materials.
And you don't think that could be, still apply to the storyline that's
No,
happening now? Okay.
I don't. Not as the way they're telling it, with him already being in Middle Earth and having to figure stuff out sort of on his own as an Istari. That's just that just completely contradicts the canon. I mean,
Mm,
this is a step too far. I'm not like, I don't want to be one of those who's like, this isn't canon. It's not, because usually I like laugh at those people, but
yeah.
this is like very. It's supposed to be based on Tolkien's text, like at
Mhm.
least as much as they can. And this is veering so hard left that I
Mm.
can't bring myself to defend it. but it also does take away what we know about Gandalf's origin story, what we actually know about his origin story.
Gotcha.
At least, I don't know. I guess one could try to interpret it in a different way, but a lot of this is just like it's too soon. It it was almost like a mystery for no reason. I just
I do agree that it was a mystery for no reason. Yeah.
right. Like I just wish he was a blue wizard. I think that would have been so much more interesting and so much more creative. You
Mm.
have a blank canvas with the two blue wizards. Like you should just do that. And this is the storyline that really frustrated me and ultimately like dragged the season down for me a bit. I personally give it like a B plus, whereas give the first season like an A minus.
Mm.
So yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right. That's fair. I
So
did
I
like
have,
the
I have
way.
strong feelings about this, Neebs.
That's fine. I like this wasn't my favorite of the storylines. I think there are a few other storylines that are popping that are a lot more entertaining. But I did like it in the first season. I was really invested in it, and then in this season it was kind of like a B storyline in the whole thing. But I did like the way that you found out his name, because I was like, oh, his little Hodor moment, like hold the door. I was like, oh, okay, that's how he gets his name. So I did like that, but I do agree this is probably like the weaker part of the season. But at least Poppy gets a man finally.
Yeah, good for Poppy.
Good for Poppy. That's funny. All right, so other people that I feel like that we wanted to talk about. Let's talk about Adar, and
Yeah,
this storyline
R.I.P.
happening. Yeah. Oh my God. I really am surprised they had me rooting for this guy, because I did not like him in season 1. And this season, you're like, he starts off being the person who kills Sauron, epic hero. He's got the crown for and then he's trying to explain to Galadriel like what's happening, and Galadriel's still not trusting him, to the point where she's like, okay, maybe I do need to trust this guy a little bit. And he could have killed her, but he kept her around for negotiating, trying to get the people to see his side of what's going on. And then Galadriel was like, hey, you ever stop to think that maybe this was his plan all along? This was by design. He has no army. You're literally delivering his army to him. And Adar is like, well, if I kill him, it doesn't matter. And it feels like, it's very interesting, because at one point I can see Adar's point of view. He's like, hey, join me, and then we will have no way for him to stop us if we join forces. And Galadriel's like, well, also, if you fight them, he's probably going to turn your army against you, because that's what he does. And I think they were both right, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Like, I'd be curious to see like what you think about that.
No, yeah, I thought it was done really well. I think that Adar was really fascinating character that gave so much depth and dimension to the orcs that we never see in on-screen media. I just love the depiction of the orcs
Yeah.
in general. I do think that the way it was wrapped up was a bit fast, but also I understood it, and I understood the power that Sauron has over the orcs as their de facto leader.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because he does say that, like, he's like, do you love us? And he says, I love you so much, which is why I can't see you become his slaves. Because he
Yeah.
was using his army the armies were dying by
Mhm.
the hundreds, right? And he's like, when they asked him that, it was almost like, do you not care about the people that are dying? And he's like, yeah, I care so much that I rather some of you die than all of you become his slave.
I think it also has to do with Sauron's power of manipulation and gaslighting, and he it's basically like sorry to make this reference. So it's basically like a Sith master or a Jedi master with like
Mm.
a mind trick or mind manipulation,
Yeah.
and he's able to do that to the orcs because like he was, if not part of their creation, still part of their leadership under the original Dark Lord Morgoth.
Mhm.
So yeah, like Sauron knows the orcs very well. They betrayed him at one point, but he was still able to turn the tide and manipulate them against Adar, saying
Yeah.
he's, like you said, he's sending them by the hundreds to just try to uh, catch this, to sack this city. So,
Right.
yeah, Sauron just did as he does, gaslight gatekeeper boss, getting the orcs back on his side.
That is true. I wish they showed it how he got the orcs to change, but I guess like he's done it so many times to so many other people. It's kind of like at this point, you know what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also gave us that shocking moment because you didn't
Mhm.
exactly see it coming, where his, well, one of his orcs leaders are, or his lieutenants or whatever, are coming back in a stretcher, and they use that opportunity to stab him. But I did really like when he put on the ring. You could see him, like his deformities kind of go away. You could see him in Elf, and he talks about, the last time I looked like this, I went by another name. And she was like, "What was that name?" And he never said anything. And I'm very curious
Mhm.
about like what that was. Do people know the name? If that is something that's
Yeah.
known in canon?
I mean, Adar was a character created for the show.
Yeah.
Uh, I would be very curious to theorize on whom he may have been. I don't know if we'll get that in season 3 or 4 or whatever. No, it is interesting. It is definitely interesting.
Yeah. I did like it. And our man almost got away with it if it wasn't for Sauron coming
Mhm.
through. And then he got the rings, and then he had this 1v1 fight with Gladriel, where he was channeling, Shang Tsu, or who was the guy from Mortal Kombat who keeps changing shapes? Shang Tsung. Uh, he kept turning into other people as she was fighting him, and I thought that was really interesting. Another just way to manipulate and gaslight her, and then you see her kind of just fall to her death with the ring, and I was like, okay, damn. I didn't think she
Mhm.
was gonna survive that, but she does.
Can we just talk about that fight
Yeah,
between Galadriel and
let's talk about
Sauron?
it.
That was fucking incredible. I love that so much. And I am on the Haladriel train, and it was just like, I know they're not going to end up together, ultimately in canon, but just I love this dynamic so much. There's
Yeah,
sexual, there's sexual, emotional tension between them. They're also sworn enemies. Sauron keeps saying, "I could have given you the world," and just
yeah.
like, oh, it was so good. Even like, it was horrible to see, but when he stabbed her and just like the drama in that, and just it was so well done, and the choreography was amazing.
The choreography was great. I really like seeing that. It's one of the better fight scenes, and I thought it was
Mhm.
really, really good. The entire battle fight scenes I thought were really, really incredible. Even Adar going in there and fighting Arendir and the High King, and
Mhm.
everyone's in the battle, and it's just like everything happening there is really, really great. And then we see like the dwarves. I mean, the dwarves don't show up, and you're like, oh crap, they're screwed. And then we see the other storyline where the dwarves have to actually defend Khazak Doom because the Balrog is loose, right? And you're kind of like, well, obviously they're gonna defend their home before they come out, and you kind of just don't know what's gonna happen. So I thought that
Mhm.
was really interesting too. Did you think the dwarves were going to come and save the day, or did you think they were actually going to be the reason why they fall?
Well, this is something we do know in Tolkien's text. Like, this is actually canon of the dwarves coming to save what little they can of a
Mhm.
region after it has already been sacked and defeat the orcs. Uh, I think that again, like they were dealing with their own issue with the Balrog, or
Yeah.
maybe some other orcs in Khazad-dûm. So yeah, they still came at the end of the day. So it was to be
Yeah.
expected, I think.
I really do like those battle scenes because like one of my favorite Lord of the Rings movie is The Two Towers, and I feel like The Two
Hmm.
Towers still has some of
So
the
good.
best fighting, like in terms of like actual like medieval style fighting with bows and
Yeah.
arrows and catapults and all that stuff. It's the first time I've saw something so epic. Like that was the first time I've ever
Hmm.
used the word epic was in Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. I was like,
Yeah.
this is
Exactly. Yeah.
epic, and it was cool to see that. And you get to see like these trolls where they have to fight these giant trolls, and then you see this like one random character with the bow and arrow where she has to like right before she's about to strike the bow and arrow, she gets stabbed like 7 times, and then she still had enough energy to shoot that one arrow which exploded and turned the tide. I love seeing that kind of stuff. That stuff is really awesome. I was a big fan of that.
So good. Yeah. Yeah, the fight scenes in Rings of Power, they're overall good, but
Yeah,
ultimately just because like the original trilogy is like it's peak.
yeah,
It's I mean, not to like inevitably those comparisons are going to be made, you know.
Right.
Still like solid fight scenes, especially like Sauron versus Galadriel, but it's
Mhm.
definitely something different than what we get in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah. So while all this is happening, we see that Sauron is still fighting Celebrimbor, and he's saying like, "You're gonna bring these 9 rings to me," and then
Mhm.
basically Celebrimbor kind of just like eggs him on and starts talking his shit to the point where Sauron ends up like kind of like deciding to kill him. Uh, I thought that was a really cool scene, especially the scene where like all the other elves come, the guards, and he has to like fight all of them, and you see him how quickly
Mhm.
how powerful he is. And then we see this like monologue of Celebrimbor where he calls him like, the Lord of the Rings. That he tells him earlier that like you are the greatest deceiver because you also have deceived yourself, and he really
Mhm.
does believe that like his way is the only way to bring peace and prosperity to Middle Earth.
Mhm.
And he's convinced himself of that. So not only is he out here gaslighting everyone else, he's effectively gaslit himself to thinking that he is
Yeah.
doing something that's like, honorable and noble.
And as we know, the One Ring is his ultimate demise.
Right.
You know, when Frodo and Sam and Gollum are able to finally destroy it and the end of Return of the King. The thing about Sauron, he was originally a Maya named Myron,
Hmm.
under the Vala Aule, who
Hmm.
is the smith, and he fosters ingenuity and creation, and handmade creation of dwarves, of men, of elves, etc. And Myron just desired order. He
Hmm.
thought that the music of Iluvatar, which created the universe, which creates and frankly is the universe,
Hmm.
that it was too chaotic, that it didn't have enough structure to it. And he and Morgoth, who was originally named Melkor as one of the Vala, that they needed to, like put their own stringent rules on it. And thus, like Celebrimbor said, Myron becoming Sauron did become a slave to the rings, a slave
Hmm.
to his own creations, because he thought, oh, only these can fix and sustain the world, not any nature. And that's, Tolkien's writing in a nutshell about the evils of industrialization against the beauty and power of nature. And, in the world today, we see how industrialization has gone the world, especially with climate change and resource depletion and ecosystem destruction, etc. So, yeah, Sauron is ultimately his own demiser,
Yeah,
especially with what we know that happens later on.
that's crazy. So like all of this stuff that you learn about Sauron's past
Mhm.
and all the stuff that you just mentioned. Now, I haven't read these books since high school. I read The Hobbit in high school. I read Lord of the Rings in high school. Are all of these just all in The Lord of the Rings and The
No,
Hobbit, or where
this
else have
isn't
you?
this is in the Silmarillion and other works of Tolkien.
Okay, and another work. So there's the Silmarillion, and there's also the Life and Times of Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
And what else are there?
You have Tolkien's letters, you have tales of men here and there. Uh just like a bit scattered throughout the place, but the main resource to understand first and second age history as well as the creation of Middle Earth is the Silmarillion.
That's interesting. So the main stuff that they're basing all this stuff off of is the Silmarillion, but they can't actually show or base anything off the
Correct.
Silmarillion, which kind of puts them in a box.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
They can only base it off the appendices of the Lord of the Rings.
Ah, that's very interesting. Okay,
Mhm.
that gets really, really tricky.
It's
Uh,
dicey for sure.
do we
Yeah.
know why that is? Is it because of legal reasons, like the estate
Yeah,
does not own the Silmarillion and somebody
No,
else bought it, or
the estate owns the Silmarillion. It's just that it may have very well been Tolkien's one of his last wishes that no adaptation ever be made of the Silmarillion specifically. Much to
Ah,
the like like us fans who would love to see it. It
yeah.
has so many amazing, beautiful tales in it. But you gotta respect the creator's wishes, and you just gotta just read the Silmarillion and just hold these beautiful stories in your head. It's such a beautiful work.
Damn, I'm gonna go and try to read that before season 3.
Be warned, the Silmarillion is very dense. It's a very
Uh,
dense book. It
uh,
may initially seems like, oh, this isn't too long, and then like you have loads and loads of words on the pages
oh
and
my
stuff. So
god!
just
All right,
FYI.
maybe I'll do Audible. We'll see.
Yeah. Audible Silmarillion. Yeah, I think that's a good move for sure.
Yeah. All right, that's cool. What else did we not talk about yet? I'm trying to figure out what
I
else
guess
we have.
Men in Middle Earth, the
Men in
sealed
Middle.
door.
Oh, a seal door. Yeah, Mr. Steal Your
Yeah.
Wench. He's like trying to steal this other guy's betrothed, and he's like, I can
Mhm.
get you on this ship, girl. Let's go to where they have indoor plumbing. And she's like, all right, bet. And then like her man just walks up in front of her. He's like, oh, so you got room for 2 more? And then we I thought that exchange was so funny. I was dying. And then the guy, what's his name? Kimmin? He's like, by the way, your dad is no longer the ship captain. He's actually a prisoner, and things have changed. And he was like talking his shit, and then he was like, well, listen, I can either bring you back and you get in line, or we'll have these people eat your horse. And he was like, no, man, not my horse. I'll go. What are your thoughts about him and his storyline? Because I feel like we didn't get to see much of what happened
Yeah.
with him, what happened with Theo, and then which was the other guy, Arendar. He kind of just left, and we find him with
Yeah.
Gladriel, and we just end up meeting him there. I'm very curious where that happens, because Isildur's story is very important,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hopefully he's gonna catch back up with his dad again. Maybe his dad will be in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
I did love in the storyline seeing the Ents and the Ent wives.
Oh yeah.
That was great. That was great. I just love the Ents in general.
Yeah.
There's great creatures. They're great beings. But otherwise, yeah, I think overall it was fine. You know, like just wasn't the most exciting, but I enjoyed it more than the Stranger storyline, so I can tell you that.
All right. There, Wizard Moses, not a fan.
Oh God.
Starting up tornadoes and stuff.
Oh man. Again, my mind can be changed on this. I just did not need this character to be Gandalf. He did not need to be Gandalf.
All right, fair enough. What if he's not Gandalf? Maybe he's just Grandelf. That's his name. He is a blue wizard called Grandelf.
I mean, we know like what they mean with that at the end of the season.
And then the Gandalf will be based on him. I don't know. Who knows? I'm just kidding. I'm trying to walk it back.
Oh man, it's too late.
Man. Oh, that's so funny.
Proverbial genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah. What else happened? So the elves are in not a good spot. Their kingdom has fallen. Where do you think they'll end up? Are we going to see Rivendell?
Yeah, I think that's what this valley we're seeing now is going to be. Although I will say, in interviews I had with Robert Aramayo and the actor who plays King Gil-galad, sorry, 1 second.
Yeah.
Yes, in interviews I've had with Robert Aramayo and Benjamin Walker, they described how this is only the start of like this founding of Rivendell, that they don't even know it's going to be called Rivendell yet, and that basically the elves like still have a long path ahead of them, in terms of establishing a new home, and I think. Like Robert Aramayo, he also was talking about how Elrond has had a sense of innocence kind of shattered after all of these terrible experiences they've had already. So it's like been, it's been like it's been a really rough time for them, for the elves.
So here's my question.
Sure.
Where is that third dude with the ring? He just up and disappeared. What's he doing?
Oh yeah, Círdan. He's the shipwright of the Grey Havens. He's just up in the Grey Havens.
Bro's just chilling there with his ring.
He's just chilling there with his ring. Yeah.
Is he supposed to have more stuff to do in the storyline because he's going to be important? Like,
well, Círdan Círdan is really just the shipwright of the Grey Havens, and eventually, and this isn't a spoiler, he gives the ring to Gandalf.
Oh,
When
okay.
when Gandalf arrives in Middle Earth in the Third Age, and he recognizes like the potential in Gandalf, and he says, "Take this ring, Master, for your trials will be heavy, but this is a ring of fire, Narya, and it will light a fire in you and others to continue on the fight." So like
Mm.
again, that's one of like the key parts of Gandalf's actual origin story that we'd love to see in some adaptation in the Third Age.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, maybe that's what they're building up to. Maybe this like version of Gandalf is gonna get Narya or
Mm-hmm.
something. So I don't know.
All right. We got a question here. It says, when Galadriel woke up from the fall, was that place in the forest real or like another dimension? If I remember correctly, they said it was a place protected by the rings.
I think it was a real place. The thing is, the rings, specifically Vilya and Nenya, Gil-galad and Galadriel's rings, respectively, they have the power to protect, to preserve nature and fortresses and like homes for the elves.
Very cool. All right,
Yeah.
cool. All right, man. So hopefully, hopefully he'll give that ring to Grand Elf or whoever. I was just like, if he's so important that he got this ring, like where did he disappear to? I was like wondering. But I'm very curious to see what they do in season 3. I'm ready to see where these rings go to and how they affect these people and who are the people that are getting these rings. Very curious, especially now that you mentioned that like all the men are doomed. I want to see who these doomed men are, because they will be the people who we see in the Lord of the Rings movies, and that's essentially who they are.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
cool concept that I'm excited to see. Is there anything else that happened this season that we haven't talked about yet? I feel like we covered most of the important stuff.
Yeah, I feel like those were the main things. Yeah, I think we covered all our bases.
I do want to see. I know you don't like the story, but I do want to see more of the Dark Wizard. I want to see the wizards.
I really hope it's not Saruman. Please,
if it's Gandalf, who else would it be, right?
It could just. It's like we don't.
But
need
the
this.
thing is,
also like ruins Saruman's origin story.
Because Saruman's also not villainous until Lord of the Rings. He's a friend of Gandalf.
Exactly.
So that would be really weird. And I kind of get, so like, I kind of get why, talking to you, why a lot of people are upset at this, because this show has a lot of hate. And as somebody who didn't read,
like, I enjoy the show overall, and I give them like their flowers. I just like, there's specific things I wish they did differently, and also like those who like, obviously, who are a lot of them, like, to be frank, you know, racist, sexist, homophobes, etc., who will take the valid critiques and try to use that as a shield for their racism and sexism, which is so frustrating for those of us who genuinely enjoy the show, but might have, hey, you know, we wish you would do something. Like, I'm still giving the season a B+. You know, it's like,
that's the thing. Like, for me, like, I really, really love this show. I love the acting. I love the dialogue. I love the action. So to me, it's a great show. But then when I tweet about it and I get all this, hey, some of them is like not valid, but some of them is like, hey, I do agree what you're saying, but I hate that they're butchering the storyline. And as someone who doesn't know what the storyline is supposed to be, it doesn't. I don't have that initial reaction
like that. So that's a response to you. That's a form of gatekeeping right there. Like, what storyline are you supposed to know? Like, what context? It's not an inviting like way of to like welcome anyone into the fandom. And that's what's so frustrating, especially like with these online fandoms and the taking out of the personal in that only text-to-text interaction. And now you have, I mean, this is sort of off topic, but actually kind of really on topic. Now you have I'm sure you saw the news, like studios are trying to create like focused groups of fans in order to try to like wade off like toxic fan behavior by literally changing their stories. No, that's not what you do. You stand by the story you say, and you like shut out racist, sexist, homophobes, the bigots. Like, it's it's so cowardly
It really is.
ultimately. I just like, and I'm afraid, in Hollywood for this effective policing of art. Because
Yeah.
listen, hey, like I said, I didn't like, what they did with Gandalf this season. I'd rather they still try to do something different, take a swing and a miss. And I'm not going to, for example, like, I mean, obviously I don't like, I have the fortune of speaking with the creators of this amazing show. That's
Mhm.
a privilege I have, and like obviously I'm respectful to them. But if I didn't have that privilege, even so, I would not like be going after the creators of this show for like, which is ultimately like a fictional story that like has, it's a specific of a fictional story that is not going to change things ultimately that much. I have a frustration with it, but that's just like my own critique as a
Sure.
fan. It's just like a nuanced thing. And I didn't mean to make this a rant about fandom, sorry, but it's why we can't ultimately have nice things because
Yeah.
fandoms have no chill.
The thing is, I feel like it is up to creatives and their responsibility to push things forward. Because if we
Yes,
listen to
exactly.
fans back in the 60s and 70s, we still wouldn't have a person of color on television,
Yeah.
right? At this point. And
You
it
wouldn't
wouldn't
have
make sense.
Uhura in Star Trek. Yeah.
I remember watching this show 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. Super Islamophobic show, but
Yes.
but I loved it. I don't care. Kill me later. But they
Problematic
pushed
fave.
this idea of a black president, and it was the number one show in the country for
Right.
years, and it made Dennis Haysbert's portrayal was so good that it actually did make people comfortable with the idea of a black president
Mm-hmm.
to the point where I think when Obama was running for president, he helped campaign for him. And when Secret Security was what you call it, given to Obama, they would still refer to Dennis Haysbert as Mr. President. So like really funny, but like
It's
it's
fine.
about like how TV then shows can push this idea and make you comfortable with an idea enough for
Mm-hmm.
it to become real at one point.
Yeah,
And I think
media
that's
is
really, really
powerful.
cool. So I really do think that like these focus groups and stuff, they may do more damage than good
Yes,
when it
they
comes to
they
situations.
absolutely will, and I hope that studios, especially like after seeing the public reaction to them now,
Yeah.
realize that sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
ultimately, what it is, it's anti-art.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like I believe in, and I am a critic myself of giving feedback, and their job of a critic is not to convince you to like or dislike something. It's us giving our own opinions on something.
Yeah.
The thing is, art is meant to be critiqued, art is meant to be discussed,
Yeah.
but that does not work if the critics, or in this case, like fans, are the ones directly directing how
Yeah.
stories go or don't go. That's not how that works. That is a fundamentally flawed system. It's like this weird meshing of like
Yeah.
the fandom and the creative forces that just I'm fundamentally opposed to. I
Yeah,
think it's a
yeah.
terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot about what Rahul Kohli said on our podcast, and
Mm,
he said something about like, and I didn't agree with it when he said it, but as like
hmm.
time goes on, I kind of do agree with it. And he says that like the best way to support diversity is for marketing to stop talking about diversity and
Yes,
just let it happen
I
and
agree.
let people don't use diversity as a crutch to get people to talk about your show and to get people to support the show. Let the show speak for itself, and just don't put these people in positions like Rachel Zegler and like all these other people, and
Hmm.
they forcing them to talk about representation and what it means to them,
Yes.
because all it's doing is giving people ammo to hate on a show.
If we don't,
And
yeah.
the more I see some of this stuff happening, the more I'm starting to agree with his thinking. And it's like, as an artist, he's like, I don't want to be the guy who always talks about diversity. And like,
Hmm.
and then because it happens in one interview, it's going to happen again and again and again. And then before you know it, I'm that guy. And I want to be someone who's known for his art and craft rather than
Yes.
just being that guy. And I think that's really how these studios should approach these things instead of these focus groups and whatnot.
And that's why I love Rings of Power. I still love this show so much despite like my few critiques of it. It just is diverse.
Yeah, yeah,
The one thing I could critique about Lord of the Rings original trilogy is it's very white, because they made that assumption because it's European and Tolkien would have imagined it as such, which I honestly can understand and respect, at least for the time. But now, as times have adjusted, as we have a more growing consciousness that we are a very diverse society, and Rings of Power reflects that in the best way possible, especially with characters like Queen Miriel, with Disa, with Theo, with I'm trying to think,
Arendir.
Arondir, yes, exactly. Like, these are great characters, and it's just they are human, and they happen to be black and brown, and it's wonderful.
Right.
It's like you just present us black and brown peoples as human.
Yep.
That's all we're asking for.
That's it. That's all we need.
That's all we need. In all our complexities, whether we're playing fictional beings or races, etc., or real world, and something like Miss Marvel. So, like you said, where the diversity, it's just there and it's allowed to breathe on its own without a hyper-focused magnifying glass on it. And we should, of course, be continuing to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially as they are under attack by right-wing horrible forces in this country and kind of worldwide, to be honest. But we also just let it live and breathe on it by its own artistry.
Absolutely. Well, I can't think of a better note to end it on that. So thank you so much for being on the show. But before we go, let people know where they can find you.
Of course, y'all can find me on anywhere online at Spider Swars. Like I mentioned, I have a podcast called The Middle Geeks. You should check out our own Rings of Power review on that. We go into full spoilers. And I'm a freelance writer for The New Arab, Nerds of Color, But Why Though, and other websites. Stay tuned for some coverage I'll have hopefully up on The New Arab very soon.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And guys, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. We got a lot of stuff coming to you in the future. The Penguin is coming up soon. We still got Love is Blind, The Golden Bachelorette, and we're probably going to have some more Game of Thrones stuff coming soon. So guys, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And we got lots of stuff coming for you. Until next time, guys, Salaam, nerds.